Welcome to the Marvelous Middle Age Podcast, where we are building a community of people who are in the midst of midlife, sharing our stories and learning from each other along the way. Each week, I'll have a guest join me to discuss a topic that impacts our lives and touches on some aspect of midlife. We'll discuss relationships, transitions, health and well-being, parenting, careers, and more. My goal is to encourage and support you and help you thrive as you navigate this adventure of midlife. Join me here each week for the Marvelous Middle Age Podcast. This week on the Marvelous Middle Age Podcast, I'm speaking with Dawn Sparling. Dawn is the proud mother of 2 children and is a highly accomplished human resources professional with over 20 years of experience in compliance, employee relations, and global mobility. In this episode, Dawn shares how, in April 2023, she embarked on a transformative journey as she paused her full-time corporate career to embrace an adult gap year, which she now calls Adult Gap Year Plus. Dawn explains how her writing led to speaking on a stage to share her story of resilience and being comfortable in her own skin. She encourages listeners to give themselves permission to be curious about making some changes in their lives. Visit the links in the show notes to learn how you can work with Dawn. Watch her bold and visible monologue, First Class Seat, and read her blog, Finding Me, Lighting the Way. Dawn Sparling, welcome to the Marvelous Middle Age Podcast.
Thank you. So glad to be here.
I am so glad you are here as well. It's so great to see you. We are on Zoom, just for the listeners' benefit. You are in Idaho?
Yeah, Boise, Idaho.
Awesome. That is amazing. Before we get started, could you introduce yourself to the listeners to share about yourself, your family, and what you do?
Yeah, sure. So I am an Iowan, born and raised, and actually moved to Boise 5 years ago. 6 years ago, I got divorced after 23 years. And so Boise was my fresh start, and just had an opportunity with a company here, and so took that. And I have 2 grown children. So my son Peyton is 26, and he is pursuing his doctorate in Clemson, South Carolina at Clemson University. And then my daughter is 24, and she is in Springfield, Massachusetts, about an hour and a half away from Boston, and she is getting her master's. So they're on the East Coast. I'm basically on the opposite side, but we get opportunities to see them. And then, of course, I have family in the Midwest, and so I take trips and go see everyone and friends and all that kind of stuff.
I love that. Well, you're talking about your kids, and I remember them when they were just, itty bitty. So seeing your, pictures on social media with them, and when you get to see them, I'm like, how are they that old? That isn't how is that possible?
I know. Well, your son too. I can't believe he's a senior. So
I know. It's just time just flies. And I think have kids, it just seems to go exponentially faster. I think especially when they get older. Like when they're little, like some of those days are long,
they are.
Oh,
Yeah.
God. But then I feel like
Yeah.
once they hit that high school stage and they're out of high school, and then life just gets moving so quickly. It's crazy.
Yeah, it does.
How quick our kids grow up. Well, we
Yeah.
know each other from years ago in our prior lives, working together in HR. We both worked in a variety of different roles. And so we've known each other a really long time. So
I know.
it was reflecting back. I mean, God, it's been a long time that we've known each other. And I followed your adventures on Facebook. And we're going to get into all of that here in a little while.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that we've had a chance to reconnect to do this episode, and I'm excited for people to hear your story today. So you mentioned moving out to Boise to take a corporate role, but then you decided to do something a little bit unique and different that when I saw your post about it, I was like, wow, that is amazing. And different people I've shared that we were going to be talking today, and I told them what you were doing. They were like, oh my gosh, that would be amazing to do. And you kind of decided to do what you called like an adult gap year, stepping away from a very successful corporate life to travel and so much more that you'll share with us. So, can you give the listeners a little context of kind of how all that came about? What are the things you had to take into consideration to make it happen? And just what have you done during this time?
Yeah, yeah. Right. So I came to Boise to be in corporate HR still. Had been in Cedar Rapids for 14 years at the same place. And it just was, I fell in love with Boise. Growing up in Iowa, obviously, the terrain is different here. They're actually foothills. I called them mountains when I first moved here. They are part of the mountain range, but they are actually foothills. Um, so was corrected with that, but it's just beautiful. And it was just calm for me. And it was in 2019, so prior to the pandemic, and just felt really good. So was in that corporate role for 2.5 years. And then I actually moved into another role with a smaller company for about a year and a half. And really good, actually made really good money, like the best I've ever made in my career. Um, all kinds of things, got to work remote, uh, have autonomy, all those things. But something, I turned 55 in June, and so something just was at that time, gosh, it just doesn't, I feel like there's something else, or uh, do I have to do this every day? Kind of feels a little bit like a grind, like getting up in the morning, doing the thing. The work that I was doing was exciting and it was different every day. But again, it just wasn't as fulfilling maybe as it had been in the past. And so I have a good friend who's also from Iowa, but she has moved to Alaska, and she's done some pretty fun and amazing things too. One of them living out of a VW van for about a year, but and working. But I was visiting her in Alaska in February. So definitely cold, snowy, all that kind of stuff. And I usually, when I go see her, I stay for a week or two. And so we were chatting and just kind of giving her how I was feeling. And she's like, well, she just asked the question. She's like, well, what if you weren't working? And I'm thinking, wait a second.
Yeah. What?
Uh, okay, let me think about that. And honestly, she really encouraged me, and I would say even just gave me permission to even think about that. And interestingly enough, I mean, we're really close. We've been friends for over 25 years, and we've worked together through different companies. That's how we initially met. But she's the one that gave me the permission to move to Boise. She asked the question then too, like, well, why can't you go to Boise? Because I thought I would stay in Iowa, but my kids were going into college, and it's like, well, if I hate it, I can always come back. So she's been that person that's really asked me those questions that maybe sometimes seem pretty straightforward, but you just don't allow yourself to think of that. And so I said, okay. And then we kind of talked about, what would I need to have in order? Money, insurance, even doing a resignation, because I had only been at the other company for about a year and a half. And so part of me was feeling like, oh, am I giving up? Is this, just a lot of that worrying about what other people are going to think. And but I did look at that, and I'm fortunate that, I've got some investments and, 401k, those kinds of things. And so looked at insurance, and that was in February. And my last day at that job was April 13th of 2023. Yes, 2023. So it's been about 18 months. And yes, so we were chatting too, and it was trying to decide, like, should I call it something? What am I going to tell people? But she really encouraged me as well to just maybe not broadcast it, maybe not, put it out there, like keep it to yourself. And as you know, Nicole, I'm pretty much an open book. And so I tell people stuff. I enjoy sharing my life and experiences. And I think too, I post on Facebook pictures and things like that, because part of it too is to let my family and friends know that, I left Iowa and I'm fine here in Boise. I'm good, because I think a lot of people were pretty surprised by that. So yeah, so I quit, and then I started to think about what that would mean.
Yeah, that is, I love that backstory, because I think when people learn about what you've done, they're like, how would a person even go about that? And I think what's amazing is that, first of all, your friend gave you that permission, that sometimes that maybe it was kind of in your own mind, but we just don't give ourselves that. And so it's so powerful when someone can come in and do that for us. And so I love that. I love that she was brave enough to put that out there to you and just get that thought process started about, like, well, what if I took a year off, or what if I didn't work for a while? I think because in our culture, we're programmed to, you go to school and then you go to work and then you retire, and different things. I think now, with a lot of the different opportunities that people have, I think you do see more people that are kind of taking those different steps or trying different things that maybe, 10 years ago we would never even think about doing.
Right.
I love that she gave you that open door to consider it, to think about it. And that's just, huge now, looking back at what has transpired
Yeah.
over this time for you is incredible. And what if she had not done that? What if she had not put that out there to you? You think about
Right.
that. And so
Right.
that's so, so, so powerful. So I love that you kept an open mind when she brought that up, because it has been great. And I agree. I think that a lot of times our first notion is to, kind of put it all out there. And we can. I mean, a lot of, I'm the same as you,
Yeah.
open book and talk about everything, whatever. But I think too, letting people know, like, I'm doing this, I'm of sound mind, I'm okay. And people, because it's not the norm, right? You typically don't see an adult person being like, well, here's what I'm doing, and something like you've done. So people were probably thinking, wow, I wonder what's going on. It's like, no, this is actually a really great thing. And I'm going to celebrate this, and I'm going to share my journey, and I'm going to share my travels and share, things like that. So I love that you did that. So these past almost 18 months, what have you been up to? Share just a little bit
Yeah.
about what has this time
Yeah.
looked like for you.
Yeah. Yeah. So after that, quitting my job, and honestly, when you go, I mean, I had been in the corporate structure from after college, working full time for like 32 years. And so it takes a minute to realize, okay, I'm doing this. I'm really doing this. And the timing of it too, my daughter Mallory went to Drake for undergrad. And so she was graduating in May. And so I had an opportunity to just, come back, take my time with her, enjoy that experience with her in May. And so I gave myself some freedom to just, you know what, April, May, I don't have to know exactly where I'm going or have a plan, but I'm going to, spend time with her for graduation, and then seeing family and friends and that kind of thing. And it wasn't really until I think it was around September that I really started to think more about what would be next, or what I wanted to look at, or travel, or how that would play out. And I actually, so I'm part of the HR Association of the Treasure Valley here in Boise. And I always, when I've been in new cities, I've always done things like that to have a community, to get to know people, those kinds of things. And so I've been on that board since I got here, because I just jumped in, wanted to meet people. It's an amazing group of people. And so I'm on the board, and we have a monthly newsletter. And so every month somebody takes the responsibility of doing the newsletter. And Tracy and I were, we would still chat and that kind of thing. She's definitely a mentor to me. Uh, and so my month was September. And she's like, well, why don't you talk about your gap year in the newsletter? And I remember I sent an email to the president and I said, what am I supposed to talk about in this monthly thing? And she's like, you can talk about whatever you want. And I was like, oh, okay. And so I did. So I wrote an article, and I tied it, back to obviously being part of an HR, being in an HR career and that kind of thing. And because, we're typically in the HR space looking out for the employees of a company, right? And again, are we looking out for ourselves? Some of the things we tell employees, are we really taking those to heart? And so I wrote the article, and I can't remember if I encountered it or if I titled it, I quit my job to live my life. I use that title later, and I'll tell you in a minute what I use that for. But oh my gosh, the feedback I got was amazing. And that is one thing that I've found is when I tell people, I was so worried about maybe judgment of others, like who does that? Who quits like a really good job when you're like 10 years away from retirement? Like, what the heck, But honestly, people, I mean, I had men and women, and they're like, oh my gosh, you're an inspiration. Wow, that is so cool. And I would say that has been something that continues to um, surprise me, and actually maybe validate a little bit along the way, is because I do typically get a lot of people that say, oh my gosh, I wish I could do that. I wish I could do what you're doing. And I always say, well, you can,
Yeah.
you just need to think about it.
Mm.
I even had one person who I met later at a conference, and we had chatted, and so what ended up happening is I ended up actually starting a blog in October. And so I actually have a sticker and kind of a thing. It's lighting the way, or finding me lighting the way, is what my blog is. And so I had been telling this woman about the blog and what I was doing, and she later wrote me, and I had given her a sticker, and she was like, I'm not a sticker person, but she had gone and found a Yeti or whatever to put her sticker on, because she's like, it's so cool what you're doing. So that's really uh honestly huge as well. So I did that in September, and then Tracy encouraged me to just keep journaling and keep track of what I was doing, because she's like, you may want to look back later and kind of see where you've come, because, and I've been completely resistant to journaling, like pretty much my entire life, because I'm a rule follower. I'm the firstborn, and well, aren't you supposed to do it a certain way? Like, don't you have to blah, 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 and so I did. I started journaling, and then she was like, well, what about a blog? And I'm like, a blog? I am not a blogger. I'm not a writer. I'm not any of those things. But October 13th of last year, I did start a blog, and it's just, I don't know if some people thought maybe it would be a travel journal because I do travel quite a bit. It's a little bit of that, but it's definitely more insightful, just what I'm learning about myself, about the world. And so actually, I think, and I initially I started doing it like every week, I think, and then it kind of waned a little bit, but I think I've done like 15 entries, and so, but it's just cool to have, it is very cool to have that and look back at that. And so just started really, called my financial guy and said, okay, I need some money. And you know what? He was amazing. Like the support I have gotten from people that I wouldn't have expected. So you'd expect your financial guy is going to be like, wait a second, like we
Yeah.
need to say, yeah. So of course I'm giving him all the excuses, like, or, reasoning.
Right.
Okay, well, I have this much and, I probably won't use it. And he goes, Dawn, it's your money.
Mhm.
Do with it what you want.
Mhm.
And again, right? Permission
Mhm.
to say,
Mhm.
it's yours. Do with it what you want.
Right, right. Well, I
So,
think that, and I love that because again, it's someone external to you who you, like you said, you didn't believe would be supportive. Because yeah, that financial advisor, it's always going to err on like, you need to have all this saved up for retirement and here's why. And they make very good, rational, very informed responses to
yes.
that. Because that was my first thought when I thought about this was the financial side of things. And of course, you've got to have things organized and lined up and figured out and all of that. But, for him to say, no, like, do with this what you want to now. If this is tugging on your heart that much,
Yeah.
do that. So that's, yeah, again, another huge open door that had he been a little more firm on like, oh, gosh, Donna, I don't know, giving you 100 reasons why you shouldn't do it,
Hmm.
that's where, yeah, it's interesting because you would think that he would have. So that's really neat that he was so supportive and
Yeah.
encouraging to you in that as you were coming to him saying, okay, I need to look at financial stuff here and figure this out. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've had a couple, I've had some moments where I've been like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? What am I
Yeah.
doing? Um, and how much have I taken out already? And then he'll remind me, okay, well, you've taken money out, but I'm making you money too. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, that's right. Uh, and I read some books too. The Soul of Money is one, Lynn Twist. And I'm not here to plug people's books necessarily, but it's just a different way of approaching looking at abundance versus scarcity. And I know those probably sound like woo-woo terms or whatever, but it really is interesting how much power we give to money,
Mhm.
and especially in our US culture.
Mhm.
Uh, and so that was super helpful, and just really started to think about what I was interested in, what I wanted to potentially do in the future, and journaling, reading books, those kinds of things. And then the Bold Invisible program snuck in.
Yes, yes. So that I'm so excited for you to share about this because you had the opportunity to do something really cool, and I'm going to let you share all about that. So share a little bit more about Bold and Visible, what it is,
Yeah.
how you got involved with that, and then the cool opportunity that you had recently.
Yeah. So Bold and Visible, not to be confused with the soap opera, I think was Bold
Bold
and
and the
Beautiful.
Beautiful, yes. I mean,
Yeah. I mean, it's all those things, but
it is, yes.
yeah. So the friend of mine that I was mentioning, her name's Tracy, and Tracy had embarked on doing the program. So our mentor and the program leader, her name is Callie B. Elwanes, and she is in Calgary, Canada. And probably in that February timeframe when I was in Alaska, Tracy was already in it, but Tracy's kind of always been a few steps ahead of me. And I've always looked at her and thought, oh my gosh, she's doing some cool stuff. Like, wow, I wish I could do that, but that won't happen for me. That's not me, that's her. Uh, and so the program is really about unleashing your voice and also just how a lot of us, and it's geared towards women, a lot of women we've become small. Like we shrink back, we don't provide our thoughts or opinions in day-to-day life, or maybe we're not really, we speak. Like I feel like I'm not shy as far as like speaking, or when I've been in my corporate role and things like that, I would provide my opinion, those kinds of things. But were people listening? Were they really listening and hearing what we had to say? And so Callie does experiential workshops, and just so you can kind of understand what it's all about. And Tracy had invited me to attend. And of course, I'm like, yeah, I'll attend, but I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
And and so yeah. And so I attended, and of course it spoke to me, and of course that where I was in my life, and I just felt like, wow, a lot of it too is inner work. It's bringing somatics into everything as well. So floor work, kind of like sort of a yoga, but it's not really exercise per se. It's just more movement, and how that can work with you to maybe release some of the patterns you've held in your life, those kinds of things. So that happened in October, and she had a 12-week program. And so, yep, I signed up and did that program. And then her second group of, or part of her program, is something called the VIP, which is what you would expect VIP to mean. And it is the next level, but it has a component with telling your story on a stage, kind of like a TED Talk stage, and just sharing your story. And Tracy actually shared her story last November. So I started in the work in October, and then in November, I actually went to Calgary to hear Tracy's story. And I think, Nicole, you're going to put like a link to maybe
Yes.
the YouTubes or stuff like, yeah. So
Yes.
you can go see what those are about. It's kind of hard to maybe put into words, but really, they really are. They're only about 7 to 10 minutes long. So it's not like, a big long 30-minute discussion with note cards and all that kind of stuff. But it's the culmination of months and months of inner work, and really looking at yourself and figuring out, where you need to grow, who you are, what you want to be, that kind of thing, and then sharing that, and the transformation. It really shows that transformation for you.
Mhm.
And so Tracy's was amazing. But of course, again, I'm thinking there's no way, no, I would not get up on the stage. And I'm not afraid of even like public speaking or, talking in front of people, but the depth and how they're sharing it is just really impactful. And I just thought, I don't have a story. Like, I don't have a story. And so of course I do have a story, and of course I signed up for it. And and
I love how you say before everything, well, yeah, I'm not going to do that. But then I did it. And it's like, that is so, but isn't that how we all think of, like, that's good for that person over there, right? You saw Tracy in this program. Good for her. You see
yeah,
her on stage. Good for you. That's awesome for you, not for me. But then you see things that people are doing, and you're like, maybe. And then you just take that step, that brave step, and put yourself out there. And yeah, I just love that. So I just had to chuckle because everything,
yeah,
the program, the presentation that you gave, it's not a presentation, it's your monologue.
yeah,
Yeah, everything you said was like, well, I'm not doing that. And then you did it. So I just
yeah,
love it. I absolutely love that. And I
yeah,
think that's how most of us think of when we think of stuff like that. So keep going. It's just
yeah,
great.
yeah, yeah. That's the other person. Like,
Mhm.
that's they're all that, and they can figure that, they can do that, but I can't. And really it does. As I looked back and going through the program and coming up with my story, and my story really is basically about the last 6 years of my life. It's funny because when we get to the point, gosh, we started last October, or when did we? Now I'm not, now all the times are, but anyway, we didn't start crafting our stories until about May of this year. So there's a lot of work that, is happening. And it was funny too, because like the first version, Callie's like, it's not your memoir. Like, you're not telling everyone, like, I was born in, whatever small town in Iowa, blah, 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 blah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but right, that's where you kind of all
Mhm.
go to. And so it really is finding that place that really defines who you are and where you're going. And so mine is really about the last 6 years. And so yeah, so um it happened that I was on stage in Calgary October 4th. So just a couple weeks ago from when we're recording this. And we're there for a whole week, actually up to the story time. And there were 19 other women who were on the stage as well. And it went over 2 days, so the third and the fourth. And it was just amazing. We call it that we crossed this threshold, and it's not about the story, but it is about the story. So it's kind of both. It's just all of that work, and just all of the questions that we've asked ourselves along the way, and the things that we looked at, and the somatics that we've done to really be comfortable in finding ourselves. And it's not that I wasn't always being authentic, but I am comfortable in being who I've always been.
Mhm.
So, and what I realized is that, and a lot of women, especially parents or caregivers or whoever you may be, because so many women are, play that parental role, regardless if they, biologically have children, is that, we're caregivers, we make sure everything is good with everything around us. The HR profession, same thing. We make sure everyone's happy, we solve their problems, we do all those things. And so that focus is so outward. And I know it may sound a little cliche, but it's that outward focus that we have. And then you get to be in your 50s and your kids are leaving your house, your empty nest, you get a divorce, you whatever, retire, whatever may happen as you're aging. And then we do kind of have that, now what? And what's going to happen now? And so, and just really understanding that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, so I will link to your monologue in the show notes, and I will link to the Bold and Visible program in the show notes as well. I had the opportunity to watch your monologue on YouTube, and I just want to say how and again, I've known you in our professional capacities for a long time. I was just so impressed at your just fierce bravery, and like how you just got up there and you're like, this is me. This is who I am. This is what I've been through. It does not define me. I am authentically showing up for myself as myself every day. I have worked through some stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm coming out on the other side. I'm in the midst. I'm all the things, but this is me. This is who I am. And I was just so proud of you. And you just,
Oh, thank
and you're
you.
just, I mean, you're just a great, speaker, in any way, but then to hear you articulate that story of the past 6 years and what has unfolded in your life.
Yeah.
Like you said, you found yourself in probably a different place than you thought you would find yourself at this stage of life. And you've
Oh, yeah.
navigated that just so well. And that monologue is great. So I will link that so others can check it out, because it's just, and I loved how the audience responded to you too. There was laughter, there was
Yeah,
laughing,
there was.
yeah, like, and so
Yeah.
just that encouragement too, from the audience was really, really cool to hear as you were sharing different components of your story. So it was amazing. It was amazing. When you
No,
started
thank
the
you.
Bold and Visible program, did you think this is how, I mean, and I'm not saying this is the end of the program for you, but like, did you think it was going to culminate with you on a stage in Calgary presenting to hundreds of
No,
people, or like?
no, I had no plan of doing that. Like, I was like, no,
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that. That's not me. Like, I don't need that. I'm not doing that. That's not me. And even though the women that spoke when Tracy did, their stories were amazing too. And that's the thing. It's not it's just everyday stuff. Like, it's not
Like you're not, I didn't go out and save the entire world, but here's what happened in my
no,
world.
no,
Like,
no.
here's
It's
what
just
happened in my life. But there's people
yeah,
in the audience though that are listening that are going, me too. Like, oh wow, okay. I'm
yeah,
not the only one that had this happen or made this choice or this happened to them or whatever. And so I think there's so much validation for people when they
yeah,
hear other people's stories, because sometimes you do feel like I'm the only one this is happening to, which in your rational brain, it's not, right? But yet
yeah,
in the moment, sometimes I feel like I'm the only one and I feel so alone. But then when you hear other people share, it's like, oh, wow, okay, she gets it too. She's been there, or, she's been
yeah,
through whatever.
yeah,
That's so powerful. So I
yeah.
think that's another gift that you gave people through your monologue, is that
Oh,
I've been there. I've done this. I've been through all the things, right? And I'm here and I'm showing up.
yeah,
I'm showing up.
yeah.
You
And
know.
I love that you call it a gift, because that's exactly what Callie reminds us, is that it's a gift to people. Like, I'm not telling my story to try to fix certain people or to try to whatever. I'm just sharing. This is what I did. This is how it came up around and manifested. And so, she's always like, you're giving a gift to people and you don't even, maybe realize it. And then it's just to get there too. It's really about those some deep questions and deep thinking and just honesty with yourself. And one thing that has changed for me is that there's been subtle ways that people, I think, have seen me change, and maybe some appearances, my appearance, or maybe occasionally people say, oh, you're glowing, and wow, you look like you're having so much fun, because a lot of what people see on my Facebook is me traveling. And I do travel a lot just because I moved away from people, but I've traveled internationally, and I've gone on, one of the big things for me has been going on road trips solo. 6 years ago, 5 years ago, when I was here in Boise, I hated being by myself in my apartment at the time. And then now I have a house, and now I relish that solo time. And I love being with people, but it's just, I don't feel sad, or I've just been able to move past that. And especially to having gone through a divorce after being married for many years, that can be obviously very difficult to navigate. And I always chuckle too. I'm like, if you would have told me 6 years ago that I would be living in Boise, Idaho, I would have told you, you are crazy. Because Boise, Idaho, I mean, even my mom, like when I told her, I'm like, well, I applied for this job in Boise, Idaho. And she's like, okay, what's in Idaho?
Probably what people say about
yeah.
Iowa. Iowa and Idaho get mixed up a lot. So about what's in
Oh
Idaho?
yeah, all the
What's in
time,
Idaho? What
all
the
the time.
heck? Right? I love that. I love
Yeah.
it. I love it.
Yeah. And then, like you said, oh, I'm sorry. Go
No,
ahead.
go ahead. Yeah.
I was just going to say, and like you said, and then quitting my job, and then all the things, right? It's just like
Yeah.
these things have presented, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to do it.
I love that. But again, I think it comes back to why not me? Why not? Why would I not do this? And so I think if there's anyone listening who's maybe in a similar place where they're questioning whether it's something they're doing professionally or something personally that's going on, like, and again, we're not encouraging anyone to make any really irrational, decisions here or anything like that, but really kind of sitting back, taking a step back and thinking, well, gosh, I really always felt a heart, pull on my heart to do X. Why can't I
Yeah.
do that? What would stop me
Yeah.
from doing that? What are some things, are there barriers or challenges that I can clear out of the way to forge a path to doing X, Y, or Z, whatever the thing is? It may not be as major as, quitting your job and taking time off, but it might be something else. Maybe it's a volunteer opportunity. Maybe it's an opportunity to sit on a board of an organization you're passionate about. Maybe it's
Yeah.
a different career path professionally that you've never thought you could do, but have always been interested in, since I started the
Yeah.
podcast, I've had people say, well, how do you do that? Like, I've never even thought that was something, so it's things like that, that I think your experience has shown that these things can happen, and maybe they'll look a little different, or they'll take a little longer or whatever, but you can do these things, and it doesn't have to be
Yeah.
that gal over there doing it, not me. It can be me, right? I can do these things.
Right.
So
Right.
if someone is listening and they're having these thoughts, do you have any words of advice, encouragement, guidance you would want them to consider as they're having, kind of going through these thought processes about their life or their next stage of life?
Yeah, definitely. I think the biggest thing, right, is allow yourself that permission. If you haven't had permission from anyone, this is your permission to go ahead and think about it, and maybe just think about it and be curious about it, and sit with it and think, oh wow, what if I did do this, or what if I did move to part-time, or if I changed careers, or if I went back to school, or if you wanted to move or something like that, or travel. I mean, it can be many different things. And I think the other thing for me was to really respect and value myself as much as I do other people. And that was a pivotal thing for me to realize, that I wasn't valuing myself. as much as I could. And that it really is. And I still have, I mean, I just had some friends here and was talking about the holidays and was trying to figure out, am I going to travel for Christmas? And I usually do, but timing and stuff like that. And Christmas is, or Thanksgiving is a little bit late. And I was like, well, this person and that person and whatever. And my friend looked at me and he said, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? And I was like, oh, okay, yes. Okay, yes. What do I want to do? And sometimes the questions are just so simple, but we make them difficult, or we wrap other things into it. And I definitely had a lot of fear around what other people would think. I think just growing up, that's just something I learned. And it's not that I've kind of thrown caution to the wind, but it's more of like, I'm fine with being me. And if somebody doesn't like it, then that's okay. Then that's their choice. But this is my choice, and I'm honoring myself and what I want to be. And one thing is I've had some relationships that have changed, some relationships that have, you know, uh, fallen away a little bit. And probably 6 years ago, I would have been trying to fix it, trying to mend it sooner than maybe it might happen. And I've just been at peace with that and said, you know what, that's just how that needs to happen. And we'll just go forward and see what else happens. I would say too, just be bold, whatever your bold is. And again, doesn't have to be moving across the United States or, even getting on a stage, but do something bold, like just give yourself that. And just really choose to be you. And I've really found myself and given myself permission to be me. And that's why I said finding me, lighting the way, because I really feel like I have been finding myself. Again, I know that's definitely cliche. Oh, she's off finding herself and whatever. And then hopefully too, that it does light the way for others, that you do see, oh, wow, she took that step, and then maybe I can take that step. Because I think in today's society, and especially in the generation that we're in, Nicole, in our 50s, we didn't grow up thinking that we could do some of these things. It, like you said earlier, it was, get the degree, graduate, get the job, get married, have children. And then my first blog was, I quit my job to live my life. And I would just say, live your life, live it, live it. We are in this stage of, we've been around the block many times, we've learned a lot. And I think as well, society kind of gives us this impression that we're winding down.
Right.
We're winding down to retirement. We're gonna, go to Florida and retire. All of those things are fine and good. But for me at 55, I mean, I'm not guaranteed tomorrow. None of us are, right? And so that was my thing, is that I'm going to live my life right now. And honestly, I have gotten a new excitement about not knowing what's next. To a certain degree, where before I used to kind of have that planner, that Franklin planner, all, written out. And so it's been freeing. And that's been my word that's kind of come up this year, is freedom, liberation. It's just been liberating for me. And really exciting and joyful. And sometimes, I get nervous, but I think to myself, I'm like, okay, if I ran out of money, which I'm not gonna, but if I did, okay, well then fine, I have to figure it out, and you'd be surprised at the things that come to you that you weren't expecting, opportunities. I mean, even you reaching out to me for this podcast, I was like, oh my gosh, because I knew you were doing it, but I was like, oh, that's so fun. And I've done a couple other ones. Um, I've gotten involved in some volunteer groups. The other thing too is I feel like I've been a lot more intentional about what I've been doing versus trying to do all the things, be on this board, do this, have the right job, whatever. I'm really trying to make my choices intentionally. And so I did step away from some things that I thought were, they had done fine for earlier, but they weren't serving the purpose that I needed. And so, and instead of worrying about people and what are they going to think, I just said, hey, thanks, but I'm done with this. And it was good.
Yeah. I love all of that. First of all of those points, all of those things are absolutely critical. And I love your focus on how freeing and liberating all of this has been, because again, I agree. Think that people of our age, our generation, were, kind of given that traditional trajectory of what our lives were supposed to look like. And that at a certain point, it's like, well, you're done, right? You've hit a certain
Yeah.
age, or you've hit a certain point in your career or whatever it is. And it's like, I feel, and I don't know if I would imagine you feel like this too. Like, I feel a little bit like at 50, like I'm just getting started.
Oh,
Like
yeah, for sure.
new things, right? That, and again, it's not even big things, but it's just like, I feel like, gosh, I'm really just now tapping into who I am, where I really want to spend my time, who I want to spend my time with, what I want to do. And that's incredible. And do I have it figured out every single day? No, but like it's just incredible, that feeling that you have. And it's, you can't look back. You can't go, well, gosh, I wish I would have. It's like, no, let's start today. Let's move forward.
Yep.
And it's the best feeling. It really, really is. And it's fun. And you can almost feel your brain just firing on all cylinders,
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, there's parts of my thought processes that have been dormant for so long that are waking up. And it's the most incredible feeling to have that at this stage, when everyone, society, whatever, tells you you're supposed to wind down. It's like, oh no, this is just the prime time for me. And some people are blessed enough to experience that younger, in younger stage of their life.
Yeah.
Again, I think our generation wasn't ever really encouraged to do that. So back then all of us weren't thinking about that. So I love all of that. I think all of those words are going to be very encouraging to people that are listening that may be finding themselves in a similar circumstance. And I hope that it encourages them to just start to think about it. You don't
Yeah.
have to take some big
Yeah.
drastic action at this point, but just start to think about the different segments of your life and think about is there anything different I would want? Or maybe you're a person who's really content and super happy with everything. And you're like, I just want to supplement and keep doing the things I'm doing. And that's great too. But if you're someone out there who's like, gosh, I really felt stuck, or I felt like I'm not living authentically, or I'm, doing something professionally that just is not, what I want to be
Yeah.
doing, start to just put it out there. That, like you said, I love that you said, this is your permission. We are giving you permission
Yep.
today,
We are.
listening to this, to do that, and not be,
Yep.
and you're going to have a little fear. You may, find someone in your life, a trusted person to talk to about it.
Yeah.
Put it out there to somebody if you just feel like you need some support. Um, read Dawn's blog. I'll link to that in the show notes as well. Listen to her monologue. It's incredible. And so, get sources of encouragement for yourself that are going to listen. And again, if someone that you love and care about is like questioning, like, why are you doing this? What are you doing? That's okay.
Yeah,
Don't let it hold you
absolutely.
back. Don't let it stop you. If there are things they're concerned about for you, whether it be like the financial piece is the one I always come back
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
seek out someone who can give you advice on that,
Mhm.
get those resources to help you think through these things because that's important. You want to be, you want to make sure the decisions you're making are informed and all of that, just like you did. You went and sought out advice and got that. So that's great. Well, this has been so much fun. I just
Yes.
loved following along with all of your adventures and everything you're up
Yeah.
to. I can't wait for people um to watch. You can watch it on YouTube and listen to your monologue.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this has been so much fun catching up.
Yeah, it has been great. And I encourage you to look at my first blog, the one where I quit my job to live my life. There's a quote at the end that I think kind of sums up what we were just saying and, talks about you aren't stuck and you do have choices.
Absolutely. So
So go
important to
listen.
keep that in mind all the time. Absolutely. Well, thanks, Dawn. Thanks for being on.
Thank you.
If you're enjoying the podcast, please follow the show to make sure the latest episode is on your podcast feed each week. I would greatly appreciate a rating and a 5-star review on the podcast platform you're listening on. It helps others to find the show. If there are topics you'd like me to discuss on the show, please email me at themarvelousmiddleagepodcast@gmail.com or direct message me on Instagram at Nicole Stute. Thank you for listening.